This week's constellations are Aquarius and Pisces. This will be a shorter presentation. There are no star names to learn in these constellations. So let's have a look at them. This is the part of the sky they're in, and you may not recognize any familiar patterns in here, although there are some. And this is Aquarius. It's supposed to represent a water bearer, a person carrying a jar of water. I just think of it as this odd little asterism and go from there. And this is Pisces over here. The fishes is what Pisces is supposed to represent. Where those two long lines meet is perhaps a person holding two fishing lines together, and then out at the end of each of those long lines, the circle on one and kind of a half circle on the other, those are supposed to represent the western and eastern fishes. The western fish is on the right and the eastern fish is on the left. So these take some imagination. In this same part of the sky is Capricornus. I find it easiest to find Aquarius by first finding Capricornus and then working my way eastward from it to find Aquarius. And then Pisces I can find in a different way. I'll point out here in a minute. To the left of Pisces over there is Aries, which for some reason I have an easier time finding than Pisces. Actually, it's got a pretty good landmark above it. And then here between the fishing lines of Pisces is the great square of Pegasus, which is actually a pretty big square up in the sky, and it's fairly easy to find for me for some reason. And it's supposed to be a horse. It's an upside down horse. We'll have a week where we look at that, but anyway, that's things you can see in this part of the sky. And then attached to Pegasus is the constellation of Andromeda, and I think that's probably why I can find Aries, because it's down below Andromeda. Okay, checking this out in the next slide. There's Aquarius. The part of Aquarius that I have the easiest time spotting is right up here, this little Mercedes-Benz hood ornament up there. And the rest of it is pretty faint stars, but for some reason that little batch of stars will catch my eye, and I can find the rest of the constellation from it. These are faint stars. You're not going to see them from in town, and you really do have to get out under a fairly dark sky to be able to spot these things. These constellations were named back when towns did not have street lights, and so after dark in a town it got dark. And these would be towns in the ancient world, ancient Greece, places like that. So okay, and over here is Capricornus, which isn't super bright stars in it either. You have to be under a fairly dark sky to spot it as well. And then here's another chance to look at Pisces here. For finding Pisces, I find it easiest to find the great square of Pegasus, and then I know I can see which corner Andromeda is coming off of, and the adjacent corner is the one that the fishing lines of Pisces are straddling. So there's the great square of Pegasus. The dashed lines are there because the star that they meet at actually belongs to the constellation of Andromeda. Just barely. The boundary between Pegasus and Andromeda is just barely to the right of that star. It's called Alpheratz, by the way. When I find Pegasus, then I can find Pisces, and that's what I do to track that down. There are quite a few constellations like that I have a hard time just picking out of the dark sky until I find some things that I recognize, and then I can track them down. And then Aries down here. Above and to the left of Aries here is the most accurately named constellation in the sky, Triangulum, and so that one's pretty easy to spot. Andromeda up there, I can find it. Below it is Triangulum, and below it is Aries. So that's the order I usually go through in trying to find those in the sky. And then Pegasus, when I see the great square, I use it to find Pisces. And that's the pattern that I go through in finding a lot of these things. Okay, back to Aquarius and Capricornus here. There are some various deep sky objects in these constellations, but I'm just going to look at one that's in Aquarius, and that's something called the Helix Nebula. And I'm pretty sure this next picture that's coming up, is one taken by the Hubble Space Telescope, if I remember right. But looking down the tube of this, it appears to trace out a helix in space. And this is another planetary nebula. One of the stars in that blue region in the center is the star that has puffed off its outer layers and is lighting up the remnants of that star. The core of the original star is glowing in the ultraviolet and lighting up the clouds of gas that the star puffed off. And so that's what we're seeing here. That's it for this batch of constellations. Fairly short presentation on here. You don't have to remember any star names in Aquarius or Pisces.